Hey guys, Brad from SimpleGuitar.com here, and welcome back to another Total Beginner video. This is part of the Total Beginner series of videos that are aimed at getting you up and going with zero experience with guitar or music. And today we're going to get super basic, and we're going to talk about music notes. What the heck are music notes? Now, before we dive in, one thing that I want you to think about is how many notes have you heard in your entire life? How many different musical notes have you heard in all the music that you've listened to? I want you to think about that because as we go through this, we're going to answer that, and the answer might surprise you. Okay, this is as simple as we can get when it comes to music, but it's something that I wanted to talk about because I recognize that when I started playing guitar, I come from a musical family, and so I've been surrounded by music my whole life. So understanding music notes and what they are and all that stuff is something that myself and I know other teachers will take for granted sometimes. So we're going to talk about what the heck music notes are, where they come from, and how they work on the guitar, and get super basic with this. A lot of people will get confused or overwhelmed by this kind of information, but I'm going to make it as simple as I can for you, and I hope that it helps you out. So what the heck is a music note? Well, basically a music note is a sound created when an object, like a guitar string, vibrates. When a guitar string vibrates, it moves the air molecules around it, which creates the sound. Our ears then capture the sound and processes it by assigning a sound to the brain. Okay, so when our ear picks up the vibration in the air, then our brain says, that's this sound. Okay, the frequency, or how fast or slow the string vibrates the air around it, determines how high or low the sound of the note is. Different frequencies of vibration create different notes. Early Greek mathematicians calculated ratios for different vibrations and gave us the foundation for what we now use as the standard set of notes in Western music. That's actually a really cool story about Pythagoras, who you may remember from math class, from doing the Pythagorean theorem with triangles, a squared plus b squared equals c squared, right? He's actually the one that started to work on these vibration ratios that gave us the basis for Western music. And it all had to do with the sound that was made by blacksmith hammers. He noticed that different hammers made different sounds. And so that's what kind of started it all. And then they calculated it. It's a crazy cool story, but we're not going to go into that right now. Okay, so how many notes are there in music? So I asked you this question earlier, and I want to answer that because this is something that a lot of people, when they think about how many different notes they've heard throughout their life, they would think, oh, it's got to be thousands or hundreds or a whole lot, but it's not. It's not thousands. It's not hundreds. It's not even dozens. It's only 12. That's right. All of Western music for the last hundreds and hundreds of years is built on 12 notes. These 12 notes repeat, though, as we go higher or lower in sound, and we can move through these notes in two directions by moving up in pitch or going down in pitch. If you don't know what pitch means, pitch in music is basically just the position of a single sound in the complete range of sound. Sounds are higher or lower in pitch according to the frequency of vibration of the sound waves producing them. So pitch is a very common term. It's another word that you'll hear for note or for music note. So when we say higher in pitch, we mean that it's vibrating faster, so it sounds higher. And lower in pitch means it's a slower vibration, and so it's a lower sound. So before we start naming all these 12 notes and going over how they work, I want to touch on one concept first. In music, we name the distance between any two notes. This is called an interval. It's just a way to label the space between any two notes, just like an hour is an interval of time or a meter is an interval of distance. We also have musical intervals between notes. The most basic musical interval is called a half step, and that is the distance of going from any one note to the very next note, whether you're going higher or lower. So every musical note is only one half step from the next note going up or down. So of those 12 musical notes that we have, they're all a half step away from each other. So there's a half step in between each one. Make sense? That's an important concept that you have to understand. And we can talk a lot more about intervals, but that's all you need to know for right now, and we can talk about more stuff with intervals later. Let's take these 12 music notes and we're going to split them into two groups. One, we're going to have naturals, and we're also going to have accidentals, okay? There are 7 natural notes and 5 accidental notes. So first, let's name the natural notes. This is easy. It's A, B, C, D, E, F, G. So if you know your alphabet, that is the first 7 notes of music. We call these the natural notes, okay? So let's use these boxes right here to represent all 12 musical notes, and each box being 1/2 step apart from each other. Okay, so these 7 notes will fit into these boxes, and this is where these 7 notes will go in these boxes. And these boxes will give us the order of notes. And the order of these notes, the 12 notes of music, is the same all the time. And you're going to see that as we go through this more. So we're going to have A, and then we have an empty box, and then B, and then C, and a space, and then D, and then a space, and then E, and then F, and then a space, and then G, and then a space, and then we would go to A again after that because these repeat, okay? So remember, every music note is only a 1/2 step away from the next one. So these blank spaces between A and B, and C and D, and D and E, and F and G and A is where we're going to find the other 5 accidental notes. So now let's go over the accidental notes and name those, okay? So the accidental notes can be known by 2 different names, even though the note is the same. So the 5 accidentals can have a sharp name, or they can have a flat name. Sharp means higher in pitch. Flat means lower in pitch, and the symbol to indicate sharp looks like a hashtag or a pound sign, and the symbol to indicate flat is kind of like an italicized B, okay? But when you see those symbols, we think sharp and we think flat, which means higher or lower, okay? So for example, here's our 12 boxes that represent the 12 notes of music, and our natural notes are in there. And remember, each one of these boxes is a 1/2 step away from each other, okay? That's important. So if we start on A, to get to B, we have to go 2 1/2 steps, okay? But if I start on A and I just go up 1/2 step, then the note that we're going to be on, we're going to call A sharp, because I'm on A and I went higher, which is sharp, okay? Now the same thing is true if I start on B, but instead of going 2 1/2 steps lower to get to A, I just go 1/2 step lower. And if I do that, then we're going to call that same note B flat, because we're going lower. So A sharp and B flat are 2 names for the exact same note. Pretty crazy, right? So that's what I mean by the accidental notes have 2 names. They can be known by a sharp or a flat. So in this case, this note between A and B can either be called A sharp or B flat. So let's look at these other accidental notes here, okay? So if I'm on C and I go up a 1/2 step, I have to go 2 1/2 steps to go from C up to D. But if I only go 1/2 step, then we're going to call that note C sharp. Okay, pretty straightforward. And then same thing between D and E are 2 1/2 steps. So if I go from D and I go up 1/2 step, we're going to have D sharp. Now E and F are a 1/2 step away. There's not an accidental between those. So if I'm on F and I go up 1/2 step between F and G, then I'm going to be on F sharp. And same thing with G. If I'm on G and I go up 1/2 step between G and A, I'm on G sharp. Now, the same thing applies for the flats. The flat name is going to come from the note that is 1/2 step higher. If I'm on D, and instead of going 2 1/2 steps lower to get to C, then I'm going to have D flat. If I'm on E and I go 1/2 step lower, so I'm between E and D, I'm going to have E flat. If I'm on G and I go 1/2 step lower and not all the way to F, then I'm on G flat. And if I'm on A and I go 1/2 step lower, then I'm on A flat. Does that make sense? So this is all 12 of the notes. We have A, and then the note that is A sharp or B flat, and then B, and then C, and then C sharp or D flat, D, D sharp or E flat, E, F, F sharp or G flat, G, G sharp or A flat, and then A. Okay, and remember, each one of these 12 notes is half step away from each other. Okay, so to go from one note to the next note is always going to be a half step. Now, whether a note is called sharp or flat will depend on the context of the music, and we'll talk about that later. You don't need to know that right now. But also, there aren't any accidental notes between B and C, as well as E and F. Those notes are always a half step away from each other, and so that's why there's only 5 accidental notes. Now, I don't know why we use this system of sharp and flat. I don't know why it's not just A, B, C, D, E, F, G, H, I, J, K, L, and we just use the first 12 letters of the alphabet. I don't know. But this is what it is, and so we're just trying to make it easy for you to understand. What I like to do with this is when I'm having students learn this, they will say the cycle of the notes, the order of these notes. And as you go up through the alphabet, you'll say the sharp names, and as you come back down, you'll say the flat. So I would go A sharp, B, C sharp, D sharp, E, F sharp, G sharp, A. And then I would have them play it and come down and say A flat, G flat, F, E flat, D flat, C, B flat, A. That way you can get familiar with the sharp name and with the flat name. And then when it's in the right context, you can use whichever one you need to. So now let's look at how these notes apply on the guitar. So here I have a fretboard diagram of your first 12 frets on the guitar. And what we're going to do is we're going to take this order of notes, the same order of notes, and it's going to apply on every string on your guitar. Because what happens is we have a note for our open string. For example, your 6th string is E, and then every fret that we play is a half step. So if I play E open and I go to the next fret, the first fret, then it's moving 1/2 step. Okay, so each fret on the guitar is a half step move. Okay, so here's what the order of these notes is going to look like, starting from that E note on your low 6th string. So we're going to have E, and then we'll have F sharp, G sharp, A sharp, B, C sharp, D sharp, E. Okay, so what I will do is I will have students play these and say the name as they go up each fret. And then they'll come back down and play each note and say the name as they play it. So they would go up like I did, saying the sharps, and then come down and say E flat, D flat, C, B flat, A flat, G flat, F, E. And you play the note as you say it. And this is the simplest way to start to learn the notes on the fretboard. Now let's look at what it looks like on your 5th string. So your 5th string, the first note is A, and so our first fret will be A sharp, B, C sharp, D sharp, E, F sharp, G sharp, and then A again on your 12th fret. Okay. Now, a couple of quick things. You may have noticed that on your 6th string, your open note is E and your 12th fret is E. And same thing on your 5th string. Your open note is A and your 12th fret is A. Those are the same note. But there's an interval, there's a space, a distance between those two notes that we call an octave. So when we go from one note to the same note, either higher or lower, so we're 12 half steps away from each other, that distance, that interval is called an octave. Okay. So they're the same note. Your open A string is an A, and your 12th fret on your A string is an A, but one sounds higher and one sounds lower, but they are the same note. Okay. And it's going to be like that on all 6 strings. Okay. So now let's look really quick at your 4th string. So your open note on your 4th string is D. So that's where we're going to start in this sequence. So your first fret is going to be D sharp, E, F sharp, G sharp, A sharp, B, C sharp, D. Okay. Now, just for the sake of time, I'm only saying the sharps. If you were playing this and practicing saying the notes, you'd practice going up, saying the sharps, and practice coming down, saying the flats. But I'm only saying sharp right now so that we don't take forever. Okay, let's look at the 3rd string. Now we're going to start on G and go through the same order. So our first fret is going to be G sharp, and then A, A sharp, B, C, C sharp, D, D sharp, E, F, F sharp, and then G again on your 12th fret. Now for your second string, we're going to do B for your open string, and then C, C sharp, D, D sharp, E, F, F sharp, G, G sharp, A sharp, and B on your 12th fret. Notice how it doesn't matter what string we're on. The order of the notes is always the same. It's just we're at a different starting point because we have a different open note for the open string that we begin on. Okay, so now let's look at your first string, which is the exact same as your sixth string because we're starting on E on both of these. So on your first string, we will have an open E for your open string, and then on the first fret, we'll have F, F sharp, G, G sharp, A sharp, B, C, C sharp, D, D sharp, E. Awesome. Okay, so that is what all the notes on the first 12 frets of all 6 strings of your guitar look like. Now, you don't have to memorize this at first. If at least you begin just playing each of these up and down and start memorizing the notes up and down, one string at a time, that's cool. That's going to be good for you. I don't recommend spending a ton of time doing that. Maybe 5 minutes of your practice time, just 5 minutes going up and down, memorizing those notes. And then as soon as you start to understand this order of the notes, A sharp, B, C, C sharp, D, so on and so forth, it starts to become second nature to you. And then it gets easier and easier to find these notes on your fretboard. And later we will talk about and do more videos about different strategies that you can use to memorize the notes on your guitar faster. So this is a diagram of all the notes on all 6 strings between your first fret and your 12th fret. Okay, this is all of it. So a few things for you to keep in mind. Even though right now, when you're looking at this, there are actually 78 positions between your open strings and your 12th fret, we're only playing 12 notes. There are only 12 notes in all of Western music, okay? And the notes are always in the same order, and they repeat in that order as you go up and down. The order of the notes is always the same. Now, the name for all of these notes is the musical alphabet, or it also gets called the chromatic scale, okay? Now, in music, we use scales a lot, and the chromatic scale is the most basic scale. It's just going from one note to the next note through all 12 notes, okay? Usually with the scales that we play, like the major scale or the minor scale, we're skipping notes in different patterns, but the chromatic scale, it's all 12 notes. Okay, so if you hear the musical alphabet or the chromatic scale, we're talking about all 12 notes. Or sometimes you might hear move chromatically, going up or going down. That's moving from one note to the next note. Okay, that's what that means. So when you hear the chromatic scale or the alphabet, that's what it means, all 12 notes. So remember, only 12 notes in all of Western music. They're always in the same order, going up and going down. And it's called the musical alphabet or the chromatic scale. So I hope that that simplifies musical notes and how these notes sit on the guitar and how you can find them. It's actually a pretty simple sequence once you understand it, and I hope that that helped. If you still have questions, if there's still something that's not clear about this, please get down in the comments below the video and leave me a question, and I would love to help you out. I want you to be able to understand this because I know that as we go forward, it's going to make your life easier. I can't tell you how many times I've talked to students about this, just the basics like we're covering here. And then later we start doing more stuff and they come back and they're like, I should have listened to you and I should have started going over my notes just a little bit every day to memorize them a little bit more. This really is going to make your life easier. So start memorizing your notes just a little bit. Don't stress out. If you spend a few minutes a day just going up and down the strings, just saying the names of the notes, that's going to give you a really solid start to understanding where these notes are all across the fretboard. But like I said, you don't have to memorize the whole fretboard right now. And later, we're going to go over more strategies that you can use to memorize all the notes on the fretboard and be able to find them instantly with instant recall, not having to rely on patterns, not having to count through the order of the notes. Okay. we're going to do it so that you'll have instant recall of the notes anywhere on the fretboard. I hope that really helps you guys understand these musical notes, and I hope that made it simple. If not, like I said, please leave me a comment down below and I would love to help you out. But I do have a free gift for you at my website called the Top 10 Things to Learn on Guitar First. It's a free guide for you. It's got the 10 things that I teach students all the time to get you the most bang for your buck. So you can go from feeling like a beginner guitar player to feeling like a really confident guitar player that impresses your friends and your family when you play guitar for them. These 10 things are things I teach students all the time, and they will get you musical right away. For example, the first thing in there is learning how to play power chords. And you can play standard power chords, which take 2 fingers. I love using those. But my favorite thing is to get students playing drop D tuning power chords first, because they only take 1 finger, and you can instantly play 12 chords up and down the fretboard, which means you can play any song in any key with 1 finger. It's awesome. So I usually will get students playing at least 1 hit song off the radio using these drop D power chords, and then a lot of times I've shown these to students in their first lesson, and the next week they come back and they've used them to write their own song. It's so you can use these drop D power chords, you can use 1 finger, and you can play real awesome sounding music and impress people right away tonight. It's awesome. So go to simpleguitar.com/top10. Get that free guide on the top 10 things to learn on guitar first and start going through it and using it. That stuff is going to get you a lot of bang for your buck for your playing early on. And I will see you guys in the next video.